Google is your primary partner. Buy something. Go on. Order a personalized number plate. Let's be individuals together. Our love language is gifts and also quality time. Take the quiz. Every possible answer is backed up to the cloud. Take comfort in the infinitude of your digitized self. This is a quote from my VR work cloud copy, which was just mentioned and is currently on display at UQ. In the work, you plummet into the seductive mind of the internet, the cloud. Tumbling through galaxies of online detritus, you're enticed to forget everything and become part of the ever-expanding neoliberal machine, a live cog in a network where all things eventually wash into an homogenized sea, explode, and start again as if nothing ever happened. I make a lot of work about this type of thing, the internet and its impact on us, how we are shaped by it, contemporary enshrinement and the deification of pop and celebrity cultures, thinking with and against technology, all in this deeply queer, aesthetic, hyper-aware person who was raised on and by the internet kind of way. I essentially make immersive meta memes catered to the short attention spans of my generation. Much of my work can be reduced to one question: how does a body manifest in an increasingly digital world? And when I say body, I'm of course referring to it in an expanded sense, a body with an identity and a perceived sense of self, a body in relation. I do not stand alone in this inquiry. In 1637, René Descartes, probably you've heard of him, the father of pretty much all Western contemporary philosophy, wrote, "I think, therefore I am," creating a hierarchical binary that privileges the mind over the body. The West has never recovered from this traditionalist, rationalist framework, and feminists have been trying to reunite the mind with the body ever since. This becomes all the more complex once the internet entered the picture. What happens when our bodies disappear and become part of the machine? In a 1992 interview, Josephine Stars, member of the iconic Australian cyber-feminist collective VNS Matrix, said, "Lots of computer technophiles want to jack into the machine and want to forget about the body, to reject the meat of the body. In our work, we're not finished with the body. The body is an important site for feminists." To map feminism on the internet is to map the body in relation to technology. Today, I'll be talking about cyberfeminism very loosely, the exploration of the way that women and traditionally othered bodies and identities can both embrace and undermine technology to diverse activistic ends. This is an expansive umbrella term, and I'll only be scratching the surface, tracing the digital self, the disembodied body through the last 3 decades of increasingly commercialized internet. Fortunately, earlier this year, I made an artwork to paraphrase this journey, which I'll be using today as a framework. Cyberfeminism, a movement initially inspired by Donna Haraway's 1985 Cyborg Manifesto, kicked off in the early 1990s and has taken many, many shapes since. Haraway's Cyborg Manifesto closes on the iconic line, "I would rather be a cyborg than a goddess." My work, Real Things, which you can see on the screen in front of you, takes this statement as a provocation, an unpacking of the faux binary of cyborg/goddess and extending it out into broader notions of technocentric feminism, leaning into clickbait culture and short attention spans like all of my work does. This 13-question personality quiz smashes fairly dense theory against pop and queer culture. Via a series of seemingly arbitrary questions, users are sorted into 5 categories: cyborg, mercenary of slime, goddess, AI avatar, and glitch. Cyborg, an ironic dream and an antidote to the technophobic, essentializing second wave feminism of the 1970s. Haraway's Cyborg Manifesto envisages a new politics of subjectivity rooted in socialist feminism. Haraway uses the cyborg, a paradoxical figure, both human and machine, to radically reinvent the notion of the body. In line with queer and feminist deconstructionist views of identity, that being fluidity, fragmentation, and perpetual becoming, Haraway uses the cyborg to push against dualistic dependencies which uphold domination. I'm talking mind, body, man, woman, human, machine, human, animal, subject, object, etc. She writes, Cyborg imagery can suggest a way out of the maze of dualisms in which we have explained our bodies and our tools to ourselves. And later, high-tech culture challenges these dualisms in intriguing ways. It is not clear who makes and who is made in the relation between human and machine. It is not clear what is mind and what is body in machines that resolve in encoding practices. In a 1996 essay with an iconic title, Fabulous Feminist Futures and the Lure of Cyberculture, Judith Squires writes, "The cyborg is a metaphor for addressing the interrelation between technology and the body, not as a means of using the former to transcend the latter." For Haraway, then, the body is an assemblage, constantly evolving and updating in relation to both technology and nature. The body of the cyborg is not innocent. It is made without a God, and it transcends and acknowledges and extends what it means to be human. Haraway's cyborg is a feminist icon, and these ideas became the catalyst for all future iterations and explorations within cyberfeminism. Which brings us to Mercenary of Slime. Following Haraway, VNS Matrix released the Cyber Feminist Manifesto for the 21st Century in 1991, proclaiming, "We are the virus of the New World disorder, rupturing the symbolic from within. Saboteurs of the Big Daddy mainframe. The clitoris is a direct line to the Matrix, the VNS Matrix. Terminators of moral code, mercenaries of slime." Seductive stuff. Subverting the popular hypermasculine cyberpunk literature of the time, like William Gibson's Neuromancer, VNS Matrix built a universe around this manifesto in their project All New Gen, which was initially a hypothetical video game and installation piece, and then an actual interactive game in which you played a cyborg Gen and you go on an adventure to destroy the Big Daddy mainframe. The origins of cyberfeminism are deliberately vague. Cornelia Solfrank of the Old Boys Network, another collective within cyberfeminism, claims that cyberfeminism is a myth. A myth is a story of unidentifiable origin, of different origins. A myth is based on one central story, which is retold over and over again in different variations, which is really to say cyberfeminism is multiplicitous. There is plurality here. This concept of myth is something that I explore in my work Eidolon, which you'll be seeing a little bit later on. The capturing and recapturing of images and stories that proliferate so far that they become detached from any particular origin and take on a life of their own. The fragmenting of bodies in hyperspace. So cyberfeminism is a very difficult term to define. So difficult, in fact, that the Old Boys Network published 100 antitheses of cyberfeminism in 1997. Cyberfeminism is not natural, is not structure, not stable, not essentialist, not lack, not about boring toys for boring boys. This was a big movement, much bigger than these two collectives, but this should give you an idea of the vibe. It's important to note that the 1990s was a deeply utopian moment for the internet, and this was what early cyberfeminism was emerging from. The World Wide Web was supposed to be an open source, post-gender, post-race wonderland. Cyberfeminism was deeply connected with freedom of information, access, revealing the broken systems of a tangible world and hacking them from within. Together, the cyberfeminists believed that we could build an inclusive cyborgian future full of ethical porn and feminist discourse. I mean, this is clearly not how the internet turned out. While cyberfeminism was claiming to build this amazing new world of equality, the only voices that were being platformed were overwhelmingly those of middle-class educated white women. In a 1998 piece of writing, Faith Wilding of the Sub Rosa Collective wrote a report on the inaugural Cyberfeminist International Conference titled "Where is the Feminism in Cyberfeminism?" Wilding called the movement a utopian vision of revolt and a merger between woman and machine. And then later in a 2002 Sub Rosa publication called Domain Errors, which is all available online and it's pretty amazing. Wilding wrote, "If you're a white, educated and affluent woman, the cyborg is your ticket to difference," which I just think is a really sick burn. Early cyberfeminism wanted to democratize online space through transformation, fostering a new society of gender equality and digital equality where anybody could be anything, a monster. a cyborg, freedom and fluidity and choice. It assumed a lot about access. In a 2002 essay sporting the title, A Modem of One's Own, they really went off on puns at this time. Jodi Castricano wrote, with the help of cyborg imagery, we can claim to be multiple and infinite. The fact remains that such assertions often elide issues of race, sexuality, gender, and class. Importantly, these critiques were coming from within the cyber feminist movement itself. So there was a level of awareness here. The goddess. While the goddess of Haraway's manifesto is a reductive depiction of an essentialist second wave feminist, the term goddess within more recent iterations of feminism has taken on a life of its own. Some might call this the Beyonceification of feminism or the girl boss apocalypse, the co-opting of the feminist agenda under neoliberal frameworks. This really kicked off in a big way in the early 2010s with the rise of Instagram. The new goddess can be naturally beautiful or deeply enhanced. It's her choice. Choice economy is a vital ingredient. She is an independently successful woman who can have it all by working hard and looking good while she does it. She is a myth with no particular political allegiance cooked up by capitalism to make money. An accomplice to neoliberalism, the goddess of popular feminism forsakes the dusty, dykey, academically centered feminism of the 20th century, replacing her with the effortless cool girl. A made-over goddess with an iPhone and an Etsy business. The proliferation of this brand of feminism is highly dependent on technology, unlike the goddess of Haraway's manifesto, particularly social media and influencer culture. Identity politics, media representation, and palatability above all are the name of the game here. When I was researching for this presentation, I found a relic from the early days of this movement in 2014, an article titled Feminism 2.0 in ID Vice by Tish Weinstock, who is now the beauty editor at Vogue. Congratulations, Tish. Opening with a mention of Lena Dunham, the then star of HBO's Girls, and a quote from renowned trans-exclusionary feminist Germaine Greer, Weinstock goes on to name several thin white women as the future of feminist art on the internet. She concludes, up until this point, we have considered feminism a dirty word, having previously associated it with crusty academics and angry man-hating women. Feminism has undergone a modern makeover and it's being liked, shared, and spread all over the world, and it's time to join in. Feminist theorist Catherine Rottenberg states this kind of hyper-individualizing neoliberal feminism, which construes women not only as entrepreneurial subjects, but also as individual enterprises, is clearly more easily mainstreamed and popularized since it's been defanged of most, if not all, of its oppositional force. While this form of feminism tips a hat to continued gender inequality by posting about the wage gap, buying fuck the patriarchy mugs, and jumping on board with hashtag activist movements like Me Too and Black Lives Matter, it actively embraces a role in the economic system that upholds widespread oppression and particularly evades conversations surrounding class. As Nancy Fraser points out in a 2009 essay reflecting on the trajectory of feminism beyond the second wave, on the one hand, feminist ideals of gender inequality now sit squarely in the mainstream. On the other hand, they have yet to be realized in practice. Thus, feminist critiques of, for example, sexual harassment, sexual trafficking, and unequal pay, which appeared incendiary not so long ago, are widely espoused today. Yet this sea change at the level of attitudes has by no means eliminated those practices. Feminism under capitalism, with its push for individual success and freedom through earning, promises liberation, but actually replaces one mode of domination with another. The body of this new goddess is both a temple and a branding opportunity, a hyper-individualized body available for mass consumption. If we follow this path of commercialization to this nth degree, we arrive at the AI avatar, a seemingly autonomous identity that does not necessarily require a physical body. Due to the flood of online signposting on matters of identity and representation birthed out of popular feminism, intersectional discourse has actually come a very long way in a very short amount of time, but at what cost? Lil Michaela, the world's first CGI social media influencer, first appeared on Instagram in 2016. Since then, she's worked with brands like Chanel, Burberry and Fendi, released music and a collection of NFTs, featured on billboards, and amassed a significant fan base, currently 3.1 million followers on Instagram. Michaela, a racially ambiguous perpetual 19-year-old robot, is postured as a queer feminist activist / model, occasionally giving shout outs to the causes that she cares about on her page. Michaela is a highly sophisticated marketing tool developed by LA-based tech startup Brud to appeal to the woke teens of Gen Z. Michaela is the perfect encapsulation of the neoliberal American dream. In a 2020 article for Bitch Media, Rosa Boschier writes, Brud ventriloquizes queer second-generation immigrant identity through Michaela's increasingly targeted posts about her racial background. There's something sinister about Brud using Michaela's half Spanish and half Brazilian design to market mixed race identity as a form of power and cachet. Michaela, with her hyper-curated identity of palatable, marketable otherness, promotes a politics of neutralization, a post-racial politics that gets us to buy into global capitalism. This gentrification, this homogenization of othered identities into the mainstream asks us to put aside our differences, forget about the past, forget about history, and continue to invest in the economic, cultural politics as usual. It's a real keep calm and carry on energy. To paraphrase Sarah Schulman, author of Gentrification of the Mind, this ahistoricism leads to mass passivity, allowing for the machines and systems of oppression to continue to colonize invisibly. Brud is just another example of a company run by trend forecasting millennials wanting to make money. This is not a privilege, it's a right. As Schulman states, gentrification is a process that hides the apparatus of domination from the dominant themselves. Michaela co-opts the language and image of the oppressed subject, the robot, the cyborg, the monster, the outsider, and literally uses it to sell an identity back to us. This is deeply morally ambiguous territory. Michaela clearly epitomizes the perverse intersection of neoliberal consumer capitalism and advocacy that has allowed for shows like CBS's The Activist to be greenlit and then luckily almost immediately shut down, a show which literally had celebrities competing to be the best capitalist activists, directly turning causes and charities into commodities. However, as Legacy Russell points out, Michaela also presents an opportunity to make visible the invisible, to push the limits of corporeal materiality and reconsider how we might redefine the body as we have always known it. And so we arrive at the glitch. Legacy Russell's Glitch Feminism, a manifesto. As you can see, there's lots of manifestos within cyberfeminism. This one was released in 2020. Russell builds on the work of early cyberfeminists and queer theorists like Jose Esteban Munoz, who in his Cruising Utopia wrote, "Queerness is the thing that lets us feel that this world is not enough, that indeed something is wrong." In search of this something missing, Legacy Russell surveys the work of POC, queer, non-binary, and trans artists in relation to a rubric of glitching, which includes refusing, being cosmic, throwing shade, ghosting, embracing error, encrypting, anti-bodying, reskinning, going viral, mobilizing, remixing, and surviving. The glitch, like the cyborg, is invested in dissolving binaries and encouraging fluidity, particularly between on and offline spaces and between gender identities. Many of the artists discussed are practitioners that perform AFK, away from keyboard, that's Russell's preferred term, as well as online. Artists like E. Jane, aka Misa, Boychild, and Juliana Huxtable, whose practices leak from the digital sphere into the tangible world, creating a feedback loop and bringing into view the way that identities continue to reconstruct themselves regardless of location. The glitch is obsessed with reformulation. It refuses to be erased by never remaining static for long enough to be identified. The glitch remembers. One of the strengths of Legacy Russell's manifesto is that it acknowledges itself as part of a bigger history and to an extent defines its parameters, therefore opening itself up to the possibility of critique, which is very important. Glitch feminism is by no means a perfect text. It's deeply based in personal curatorial tastes, and it has a sometimes frustratingly casual use on the internet tone that borders on preachy. But there is a tangibility to its discussion, due in large part to the relentless centering of identity politics in contemporary media. Trans and non-binary bodies are becoming more and more common sights. Following COVID, we're all at the point of accepting that our on and offline selves are deeply intermingled. These are important acknowledgements, but the continued journey towards the post-binary cyborg is nowhere near done. The glitch is a long game. The hope that if enough glitches appear, that the matrix will eventually collapse and reformulate. And Russell closes on a call to arms. Usurp the body, become your avatar, be the glitch, let the whole goddamn thing short circuit. So, gentrification has leaked beyond concrete structures into the digital sphere and into the very essence of selfhood, our identities, our bodies. Audre Lorde famously decreed the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. But what happens when the master owns all the tools? Looking at you, Facebook metaverse. Let's zoom out for a second. The Cyberfeminism Index, developed by Mindy Su, went live last year, a comprehensive, ever-expanding archive of cyberfeminist practices starting in 1985 with Haraway's Cyborg Manifesto, right through to more recent texts and works like Russell's Glitch Feminism. The website in itself is a work of contemporary cyberfeminism. For Su, cyberfeminism is more than the relationship between women and technology. She says that the index is an attempt at an anti-canon, a restructuring of the archive that leans away from capital H history and into collaborative and community-based models of world building. The list includes lots of queer and POC voices that were sidelined in the early days of cyberfeminism and might not be considered canon. The Cyberfeminism Index does not reinvent history, it broadens it beyond the Western canon, platforming diverse voices through open access software, ongoing submissions, and non-hierarchical citation. So Su hopes that the index will also act as a starting point for future performance-based works, the compiled references working and reworking themselves into and beyond the body. Real Things, a quiz that you're about to do, is an artwork that deliberately distorts and reduces reality to illustrate the problem with over-identification, which seeks to anchor movements and identities in time as if they could possibly be summed up in a single phrase or even a curated collection of images or a downloadable desktop wallpaper, as it is in this case. In her essay, Thinking Through the Cybernetic Body, an early critique of cyberfeminism, Susanna Parsonen writes, I am more skeptical towards the totalizing representation of feminist theory as radically divided into before and after, simplifications of the past placed in order to affirm the present, implicitly suggesting the progress of contemporary culture. Such Enlightenment thinking involves a recontextualization of the past in order to believe in the progress of the present, and it includes as much forgetting as it does remembering. While this quote was written in 2002, the critique still holds up. The Real Things collection is not truly a linear or historical story of contemporary feminism. It's a reduction, a deliberate failure of a quiz that doesn't even collect your data, and it certainly doesn't define your identity. So your result doesn't matter. All of these strains of feminism and thought and action continue in some iteration today, re-emerging and intertwining constantly. The reality is that they all contain parts of each other and they can never stand alone as these totemic identities. The body is just not that simple. And with that said, I hope you enjoy the quiz. That's me.